if I don't, I'll plunder in other areas. And so what you got to learn how to do, you have to do what David did. When everybody was against him, messing with his self-esteem, David had to remind himself that God had so much invested in him that he could call on God at any time. It was the same David that wrote Psalm 40. I was in a horrible pit, and the Lord inclined unto me and heard my cry. And he looked down in this pit, and he picked me up out of this pit. And he placed my feet on solid ground, and he established me, and he put a new song in my mouth, and he caused me to be established. Now that same David was now being discouraged. So David had to go back and remind himself of all the things that he had written and all the things that he had said. And so David now said it like this: the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down. That means I didn't want to stop and pay attention, but the Lord had put a situation in my face that made me pay attention. And he said, he maketh me lie down in green pastures. And then he said, he leads me beside the still water. In other words, he said he knew that I was going to get beside myself, and he was going to have to cause some places in my life to make me look at him and rest and take it easy and let him lead me. I can't get no help in here. Well, let me give you another one that he might have said. Whenever you're in trouble, what do you do when you're in trouble in the natural? Whenever you buy a phone, what do you dial? So you can still do the same thing in the spirit. David dialed 911. David dialed Psalm 81 and 1. He shall hide himself under the shadow of the Almighty. I can't get no help in here. Look at somebody say, in the case of emergency, dial Psalm 81 and 1. And it'll get you out of a jam. Because when you hide yourself under the shadow of the Almighty, the enemy can't do you no harm. No person on earth can do you no harm. But my trust is in the Lord. Can I get a witness in here? Somebody say yes. So my seeking God prepares me. My seeking God prepares me. My seeking God prepares me for whenever God gets ready to use me. Can I suggest something to you? And whether you think so or not, there's only one or two times in a human span of life that God actually does something in your life so dramatic to change you. And if you're not ready for the moment, might I suggest you might not get to see it again in your lifetime? And your kids might get to respond to something that you should have. God intended for David to build a temple. But David couldn't do it because he was at the wrong place. And so he had to, though he was preparing for the next move in his life, he did not get to complete it because of him, because of his flesh. Do you know why the surfer is always out in the water with his board? Because he's always today trying to see if it's going to be the big one. And that's the way you got to be. You got to be ready in every day of your life that God might do something big in your life that where you can respond to it properly. So what you do today will determine whether God sends you. If David wasn't doing anything, they wouldn't have to come in and take the wives and children because they would have all been there getting on his nerves. But since he was out in battle, the enemy comes when you're busy. The enemy don't come when you're idle because he already got you. If you're a giant killer and you're not out killing giants, then the giants don't have to worry about you, and the enemies with the giants don't have to worry about you. But if you're out killing, if you're like David was out killing giants, then the enemies that are with the enemy can come in to do something to you. The only reason why things are happening to you is because you've made up your mind to do something for God, and now the enemy is bothered because you're making up your minds to do something about this, and now that the enemy is knowing that you're doing something about this, then that comes up. Oh, you don't hear what I'm saying. Let me put it in layman's terms. Anybody ever fought this, and then that happened? And then when you thought you got a handle on this, then that breaks loose. And then when you think you got both of them together, then something else happened. Job said it like this. Job said that when bad things just keep on happening, he said, this is what happened. Job said, the thing that I feared the most came upon me. In other words, I could handle it as long as people will keep coming to me, telling me what happened. But when I had to deal with the enemy myself and in my flesh, the thing that I feared the most came upon me. And when it came up on me, it put me in a situation where I couldn't do nothing for myself. And everybody that was dependent on me lost me and they left me. You better hear what I'm saying. As long as you got money to keep supplying the beer, baby, you'll always have buddies. But the moment you don't have the money to buy the beer, everybody leaves you. I wish I had a witness in here. I wish I had a witness. I'm talking about those of us that was in the world. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Bishop, you ain't never drunk a day in your life. But let me tell you something. I hung around those that did. And let me tell you something. I knew some people because I had it in my family. I knew, and I had been, and I knew, and I was around people. But let me tell you something. As long as you're doing what they want you to do, they're right there with you. But when you make up your mind to say to God, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Your friends will look at you differently. They'll start saying stuff like this. Girl, you must have done something to the Lord. Why is your credit so bad? Why is things happening to you? You must be done something to the Lord. Why don't you just go and tell God you're through with him and just come on out here and then just do what you want to do. And then people you're close to will walk up to you and say, you guys just might as well quit. You just are making a mess out of yourself. You embarrassing me. You don't make me look good. And you're just making me feel bad just to be around you. But look at somebody and say, I'm dealing with my flesh. The reason why you look bad because you're around me is because you're not waiting on the glory that shall be revealed in me. I heard the psalmist through David said this. David talked about, though he's in my mind, the trust that I have in God. He said, my soul is cast down. And he asked his soul, he said, why am I depressed? Why am I going through what I go through? And then he goes on to say, but I have made the Lord my trust. I made him my fortress. I made him my buckler. I made him my shield. See, sometimes it's all right to cry. I want you to do something with me. I want you to get it all out. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to cry. I want you to get it all out. Because this is the last day you're going to cry about that. This is the last time. I want you to get it out. No, get it out. Get it all out. I want you to get it all out. You know why? Because then you are allowed a certain period to cry. But then there's a certain time to where you got to make up your mind to stand up to what you fear. You got to stand up to it and say, look, I've gone through this long enough. I'm ready to fight. And if I'm going out fighting. Oh, you don't hear what I'm saying. I say this about the church. If it's going down, guess what? I'm going to be at the helm. And when the water get up to my nose, you're going to hear it. And it's going to say, bubble, bubble, bubble. And then nobody in here is going to take the fall from me. I'm going to take it for myself because God called me to it. And that's why I can't quit. That's why I can't stop. That's why I can't listen at you. Make me want to quit. Because my mind's made up that I'm going all the way or not at all. I'm obligated. Look at somebody and say, I'm obligated. I made a vow and I can't take it back. I heard what David said in Psalm 50 and 14. He said, pay thy vow unto the Most High God and give thanks unto his holy name. And then, I said then, when I get in trouble, I can call on him and he will come see about me. Look at somebody and say, I got to pay my vow. I can't quit because I'm obligated. I made myself ready for anything. I may be tired, but I got to go all the way. I may be lonely, but I decided that I got to go all the way. I may be friendless, but I have decided to go all the way. If my loved ones, I heard David say, when my mother and my father forsake me, then will the Lord lift me up. Look at somebody and say, when everybody around me have forsaken me, the Lord will lift me up. I can't get no help. I'm going to keep on preaching until you make up your mind to not quit. You may quit people, but don't quit God. You may quit circumstances, but don't quit God. Hold on. Paul says to the Galatians, he said, oh, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? In other words, who put a spell on you to make you quit, to give up on the church? As if you haven't been obligated, as if you haven't made a vow to God. You're just going to quit. If you could just quit, you were never obligated from the beginning. You were never in covenant with God. You were in covenant with a person, but you were not in covenant with God. But how can you quit something that God told you to do? God haven't released you. My wife. How can I quit you and the girls? I'm talking about if I really made a commitment. Don't make me quit you. You got me. Now, some of y'all said, watch him, just watch him from now on. But let me tell you something. I've been in this thing 26 years now. I'm not saying I didn't want to go outside sometime and not come back. That means I was ready to stop. And sometimes I tell her, no, I ain't doing it. I didn't get that with the contract. Sometimes she get mad at me, and she stopped. But we're committed to not quitting. When you pull up to a stop sign, and you pull up to the stop sign, and you, as long as you don't turn the car off, what is your next step? Go again. I'm telling you, it's okay to stop sometimes. But just don't turn the engine off. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Take your vacation. Take your sabbatical. You know, go to the movies, chill. Go to the ice cream place. Dr. Hill, you didn't hear that. Go. Dr. Hill tried to help me, y'all. But Dr. Hill got to plug his ears up. I'm telling him my secret places. You know how you go to Harmer Bucks, and they got these signs on here, sugar-free. But they don't tell you nothing about the calories and all the stuff, other stuff. Okay. Yeah, bless you. Oh, that sure would be nice. What are you saying? What are you saying, Pastor? I'm saying this, that sometimes you have to take a break in order to regather yourself. So here's what David did. The Bible says that when they got through saying what they were going to do to David, David pulls away from everybody that was saying what they were going to say. And David knew that the Lord was not in the numbers, but it was in what God was going to tell him to do the next step. The next step depends on how well you get along with God. You hear what I said? Your next step in life depends on how well you can detach yourself from people so you don't hear what people say and hear what God says. And David gets before God and he says to God, he said, God, I'm at a dilemma. I want to go forward. I want to go and recover. But should I recover at this time? Should I do what my mind is telling me to do right now? And the Bible says the answer comes back to him, said pursue. To pursue something means that you're persuaded that you can catch up with it and do whatever you want to it whenever you get there by it. So for you to pursue something means that your intensity level is different from following something. If I'm going to pursue something, that means that I go at an accelerated pace. An accelerated pace to take care of. Look at me. An accelerated pace to take care of a situation that is getting control of me. God says, pursue it. And then after you get there, let me give you a heads up. You're going to overtake it, and you're going to recover not some, but you're going to recover all. That means without exception. How many want to recover it all? Last thing. Anybody remember Gideon? Gideon was on the threshing floor. And the enemy was coming in and taking all their wheat, all of the things that were sustaining they were raising food for the enemy. Because every time their stuff would get up big enough to eat, the enemy would come in all the time and take away their harvest. Every time, take it away. And so Gideon was in the wine press, and Gideon had all these grapes in the wine press, and the enemy had come in, and they had started to steal from them again. And then all of a sudden, Gideon sees the enemy come, and he gets down in the wine press, and he's hiding, and he's looking over the wine press to see where his enemies are. And an angel appears to him and said, Gideon, O thou mighty man of valor. Gideon raises up. He's, oh man, I've been caught. He's raised up, and the angel says it to him. Say, Gideon, thou mighty man of valor. You know how we do when God is speaking to us? Me? As if there's somebody behind us, with that same name. And he said, oh no, you got the wrong person. You read that. You read that. And Gideon talks to the angel, and the angel said what God said about him. Well, I didn't come from a family that had all this ability. That's what Gideon said. My family is not a family that will brawl. But God said you were going to be a deliverer of your people. Who, me? Look at you, touch yourself and say, who, me? Yes, you. All you have to do is realize what God called you and operate from that. And by the time the angel convinces him, God had already started mounting him up an army. You got to get this. Before God brought you in this earth, he knew the people that were going to have to align with you. So he gives birth to people in the places where you're going to go that you were going to need to help you do what you've been called to do. Every one of you in here, God had to bring your forefathers and your parents all the way here. And if you didn't get here, you came out here for a job, or if you're out here, you're on a cotton pool, or you here for college, or you got out here and you liked it so well you loved it, and you stuck. But you stuck for a reason, because God wanted you to yoke up with this ministry. Every one of you in here, he wanted you to yoke up with this ministry. Today. And believe God that everything you need is coming through this house to make you get back, or to help you get back everything that was taken from you. I won't say lost, because if it's lost, you don't know where it's at. Many of us know where our peace is at. It's where we cussed out that last person. And we need to go back and say, I'm sorry, and pick up your peace again. Come on. Where you've abused somebody, maybe mentally, you may have said some things that you were now sorry about. And you need to go back and say, hey, I need to apologize for that, so that you could get on with your life. Or maybe some things that God told you to do that you didn't do. Stand to your feet. I'm through. Maybe there are some things that God told you to do that you have not yet done. But I want to say to you, don't you quit on me. Don't you quit on me.